And welcome in to yet another episode of the Blitz podcast. I'm your host today, Mr. Kane Schwartz, and I'm joined by my guy rocking his Dodgers gear as we're in the midst of the World Series. Respect. It's Mr. Jaden Kozak. How we doing today, man?
Yeah, they couldn't see that until you said that, so now I just feel like an idiot because I'm wearing Dodgers gear and we're supposed to be playing right now, but we're
At least
not.
the guys that you lost to are playing
Yeah, that
today.
makes me feel a little bit better about it. I mean, you feel the
Same
same
here.
way, Orioles fan. Um, but yeah, today we're talking trade deadline, which is fun. It wasn't as fun as last year. It felt like with the NBA doing that. Felt like the NFL was starting to do that, and last year felt like, okay, well, we're going to start seeing some real big deals happen at the deadline. And it's starting to seem like maybe last year was just kind of a flash in the pan, like real lots of opportunities happened and those moves. We still have a couple things we want to talk about here, so we'll get right into it.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I was talking about it beforehand about how this year, I mean, you mentioned it, how about this year being possibly the biggest deadline ever? And that certainly did not happen, did not live up to expectations. But I will say that we did have some moves. And I don't know, I think there used to be a time when Trent Richardson to the Colts was the only trade deadline trade at all, period. So we've come a long way as far as the activity on trade deadline day. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on into it. And the first guy that we have to talk about here is Joshua Dobbs to Minnesota. No, is it are we doing Leonard Williams or Joshua Dobbs first?
Leonard Williams, we'll do with that.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we got Leonard Williams headed up first. He was the big, probably, I mean, he started the day for sure as one of the biggest guys to be dealt at this year's deadline. So the compensation on the New York side was a 2024 second and a 2025 fifth round pick. So I ran these through PFF 2024 mock draft simulator just for the heck of it, and they did not like Seattle's end of it, giving up two picks, especially that second. But you do get a guy in Leonard Williams who is a former top six pick, former New York Jet. We were talking about it before the podcast. Excuse me. That John Schneider is no stranger to making trades at the trade deadline. He traded for the last sixth pick from the Jets in Jamal Adams at the trade deadline, and this year they get Leonard Williams. He's 29 years old. He's in a contract year, but he's been playing decent football. I mean, I think he's 11th in pressures as far as interior defensive linemen go so far this year. We've seen him play better football for sure, but you bring a defensive presence in to a Seattle defense that is already playing really well. And the thing that people thought that they lacked was a serious presence on that defensive line, and I think Leonard Williams definitely fills that gap. But how do you see Leonard Williams contributing to the Seattle team, who is definitely in the running for things this year?
Yeah, I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are first place in the NFC West right now. I know it hasn't really felt like that all year, but with the Niners dropping three straight, the Seahawks had a bye somewhere in there as well, so they're sitting at 5-2. The Niners sitting at 5-3. I feel like the Seahawks are one of those teams that were like kind of quietly should be making moves, and they did. They went out and they go get Leonard Williams to help shore up that front group. Their defense has been playing a lot better than a lot of people anticipated. I think that while Tariq Woolen is not playing nearly at the level that he was last year, Devon Witherspoon is playing like one of the 5 to 6 best corners in the league. Like he is playing like one of those guys. Like I think he's probably not maybe in the front because obviously corners are a little bit tougher and he doesn't have the benefit of the New York market like Sauce Gardner did last year. But I definitely think that he should be the favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year, unless I'm blanking and forgetting somebody here. He's been playing awesome. And they really needed some help on the interior. This is not a team that has been really getting after the quarterback very extremely high rate. They have not been stopping the run. Leonard Williams can kind of do both of those things at an okay level. The issue is the second round pick. And
Yep.
Leonard Williams does have, I can't remember, is he a free agent after this year? I want to say he
Mm-hmm.
is.
He is, and he's in a contract year this year. Yep.
Which makes this a bit more puzzling because, like, do the Seahawks plan on making Leonard Williams, who's what, 28, 29, at this point, like one of those top paid guys? Because if they do, then this is probably worth it. I mean, we know how the interior defensive line market is heading, and he could be one of those guys that gets paid a lot. But even still, John Schneider's been on a heater drafting guys over these last 2 years. I mean, you look at the 2022 draft, Kenneth Walker, Tariq Woolen, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas. This year, they get Devon Witherspoon, they get Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're getting a bunch of the contributors from these rookies, and this 2024 second, I mean, with the way that he's been drafting recently, could be a player of Leonard Williams' caliber almost immediately. Like he's on that kind of heater right now. And to give that pick up for a guy like Leonard Williams, who's a good player, don't get me wrong, and I get that this team needs help now, and you have a unique kind of situation here because Geno definitely hasn't looked like the guy we saw last year, but he's playing well enough to keep them in this spot where this might be the year. Like if you can kind of bring it all together, San Francisco's, kind of sputtering a little bit. Philly still looks strong, admittedly, so it's Dallas looking stronger. But Seattle's playing some of the best football right now, and I think it's being slept on by a lot of people. So I think this is a nice move for them. It's just come draft night, are they going to regret this?
Yeah, for sure. I will say that John Schneider has not done the best job at drafting defensive linemen and interior defensive linemen specifically. So that's why this team lacks what they do right now, and that's why they went out and traded for Leonard Williams, is because he does, like, I think the Poona Ford was a second round pick, who's like, I think he's in Buffalo now as like a fifth stringer or something like that. But they've had a stretch of bad interior linemen that they drafted. So I think that they're falling. I mean, Leonard Williams, he's a top, what? What would you say as far as interior defensive linemen in the league go?
I mean,
Top 10?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to put a number on it because he's also been playing next to Dexter Lawrence for the last 2 years, so that definitely helps take some of the attention off of him. I mean, he's good. Like, he's good. He's not, I don't think he's going to change this defense. He's definitely going to help this defense, but, like, if you're looking for a franchise-altering, direction-altering player at the deadline, Leonard Williams probably not it, but I definitely think this is a good pickup. It's good for the team. It's just a matter of what they gave up.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Can't agree more. And with that, let's dive into the next deal that we got from this year's trade deadline. And this one trickled in later than Leonard Williams, because Leonard Williams happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so Leonard Williams happened yesterday, and then I couldn't remember if it happened early this morning. But anyway, Josh Dobbs happens today, and he gets dealt, which was not surprising, I guess, because it was rumored right away after Kyler was deemed healthy enough to play this week, or pretty much healthy enough to go, that Dobbs would be moved. I mean, that was something that you saw, but it seemed like it was going to be too quick of a turnaround, and Dobbs has been really good so far this year, and that's why he got traded in the end. Arizona gets a 6th-round pick back from the Minnesota Vikings in 2024 in exchange for Dobbs in a conditional 7th. This, of course, comes after Kirk Cousins' Achilles injury this past weekend. That'll put him out for the rest of the season, which really stinks, especially for Justin Jefferson fantasy owners. I am now one of those. Didn't think I would be saying that at one point. But anyway, they don't have Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. Looks like they're trying to keep the ship afloat. I mean, it almost felt more convenient after Kirk was gone that they tanked the rest of the year. I know that they are starting to come back record-wise, but this team doesn't seem like it's fit to win now. But they go ahead and get Dobbs at least as a backup to Jaron Hall, and we'll see what happens. I mean, Dobbs has had a great season so far this year. He's shown flashes in Arizona. He's only going to do so much. And, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to think of this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't move the needle that much. And quite honestly, I think they would have been better off not making this move. I think they probably should have stuck it out with Jaron Hall. I get what you're trying to do here, and that's show Justin Jefferson, show Vikings fans, show the NFL we have a commitment to winning this year. But I just don't think that Josh Dobbs is going to be the winning person, as we've seen him in Arizona. They have gone 1-7 to this point. Through the first few weeks, it was like, okay, the Cardinals are feisty. They're going to fight through these games, and that bite has just kind of gone away over these last few weeks. Josh Dobbs looked atrocious on Sunday. I'm surprised that the Vikings even watched that. I don't think they watched that tape. I don't know if they don't have it yet or what, but I can't imagine that they looked at that game and was like, okay, well, let's just go get this guy and then we'll figure it out. Like, the rumor that was floating around was that, and I don't know how true this part of it is, but Jameis Winston to the Vikings was like the thing, and that Justin Jefferson supposedly talked to him. I don't know how true that part of it is, but if he was available, I feel like that would honestly be a better option, because you get a half of a season to see if Jameis could be your guy, because you've been adamant, we don't want Kirk Cousins long term. We don't want Kirk Cousins long term. Josh Dobbs is definitely not your guy long term. So if you're just trying to, like, maybe this is a safe face move of like, okay, we're trying to make efforts to get better, but we're actually not going to get better, and we're going to go get Drake May. We're going to go get X quarterback in the draft this year. But this move does not move the needle for me at all for the Vikings. I think it would have been better to see what you could have got out of Jaron Hall. Maybe he's your guy. I don't know. But we'll never know that now, because they went out and got Josh Dobbs. Pretty disappointed with Minnesota. I get, like, Minnesota fans, you got to be crushed right now, because especially for Kirk, as a guy that they've, like, really started to fall into a little bit, and he's been playing his best. That was probably the best football of his career, man. He just won 4 out of his last 5. I'm pretty sure 3 of them without Justin Jefferson.
He was signing autographs for kids this morning with
dude, like,
a torn Achilles and a cart. That guy.
Our friend
Respect.
goes to school out in Montana, and in Montana, I guess they've got a lot of Minnesotans coming down, dude. He was saying his roommates were, like, on the verge of tears, like, because I know how I felt, like, and Kirk Cousins hasn't been, like, their franchise quarterback forever, but for a lot of people, I mean, he's been there since 2017. Like, he's been the quarterback that they've known for a lot of their, like, real, like, knowing football lives. And I mean, that's not the case for all people, but the case for, like, college age students.
You just put Minnesota fans in a body bag, dude.
No, like, I'm saying, like, if I'm
of their knowing
if I'm
football,
like, okay,
like
look, if
just
I'm like
started paying
18,
attention.
if I'm like 18 or 19, and, like, he's been our quarterback since I was like 12, like, come on. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'd be a little upset. I don't know.
It's just a bad situation in Minnesota, and they're just trying to make up for it as best they can. I think that, if anything, this is fan service, like, hey, we're still out here trying to win ball games. Apparently, Rappaport, I sent it into the chat earlier, Jaron Hall could still be the starter in Minnesota. It's just, you've got like a lock steady, dead set backup quarterback, at least. If not, he is the starter. And it's not a long-term thing. I mean, Josh Dobbs, I haven't looked at it, and I haven't heard anything about it, but I would assume he's in the last year of his contract, because it's Joshua Dobbs, and he probably only got a 1-year deal anyway. So it's not, like, it's really no risk. Like, why not go ahead and trade for Josh Dobbs? This way, you can at least keep Justin Jefferson happy for this season,
dude,
and then pay him money.
I don't know if this is the move that keeps Justin Jefferson happy. I don't know if we've been caught up in what's going on in Vegas right now, but really good wide receivers playing with really bad quarterbacks does not make really good wide receivers happy. And I get that your hands are tied here. Like, okay, we just lost Kirk Cousins. Where are the really good quarterbacks at? Why don't we go get one of those? Like, if anybody was going to be on the market for teams that needed a really good quarterback, it was Kirk Cousins. Now he's off the market for all teams and the Vikings, but it's kind of an unfortunate situation for Minnesota, but I think it's kind of almost like not a much needed injury, but we've talked about something to give them a direction, and that direction kind of needs to be to rebuild for a little bit. This roster still has a little bit of a ways to go. Their defense is playing a lot better than I anticipated, and I think that a lot of that could be attributed to Brian Flores and what he's brought to the defense. But if Kirk Cousins is not the quarterback next year, then they need to have as high a draft position as possible to go get one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with this trade, they've solidified themselves as tanking for the rest of the season, and we'll see what happens with their draft pick. But I don't think, if they didn't do anything, like, even if they don't go out and get Jameis, if they didn't do anything, Justin Jefferson would be having a fit, So I think that this shows some kind of effort for him, and hopefully it keeps him in Minnesota. I don't know. It's an unfortunate situation all around right now, and they try to make up for it by trading for Josh Dobbs. So, gosh, I'm so sorry.
You
Okay.
have the option to mute your mic, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I did that. I did that while you were talking earlier. Had the wherewithal to do it, but I was going to my notes, didn't have time to mute the microphone. I'm so sorry to everyone. But
We just lost like all of our viewers. So
Montez Sweat, my very own Washington Commander, being dealt to the Chicago Bears today. That was the big deal that kind of not kicked things off because today wasn't super crazy, but was definitely one of the bigger deals that we've seen in recent trade deadline history. But yeah, so Montez Sweat goes and ends up in Chicago, headed from my own Washington Commanders for a 2024 second round pick. And this looks pretty good. I mean, we'll talk about the other trade a little later on, but I like this return. And we were talking about it earlier. We both like this return for Washington. Chicago's 2024 second is looking up to be 34, 35. I think it's 35 at the moment. But even if it's 35, I was telling them we drafted Sweat with a late first anyway. So it's like we could hit another, not even a home run, but we could do something with 35 and get a very similar player to give us some similar production there. So I'm excited about that. And it's kind of just a sign of Josh Harris trusting the process. He's starting it. He did it in Philly. And I mean, they saw success from it, at least for a little bit. And now we're seeing it in Washington now. It seems like we're selling off the entire farm, and it started with Montez Sweat. He was in his contract year. He's 27 years old. So it was a question mark of whether or not we were going to pay Montez Sweat or the other edge rusher that got dealt today. Obviously, we aren't paying either of them. So it's a clear sign in Washington that we are basically packing it in. I mean, as you mentioned earlier. But Montez Sweat, his effect in Chicago, I like it a lot. I think that they plan on re-signing him. What do you think? Do you think Montez Sweat stays in Chicago long term?
yeah, I mean, the fact that they sent this second round pick kind of signals to me that yes, they are going to sign him long term. They probably would have been among suitors that would be going after him in free agency anyway. Now you do have to give up a second round pick to do so, but you don't guarantee that he's going to be there next year, but you definitely, you're able to make your pitch for 8 games. I believe, you just create more comfort there with him as a player. It also, it's a lot easier to just re-sign with the same team than it is to go move again for the second time. I don't know if Montez Sweat has a family, but I can't imagine he wants to uproot his family for the third time in, however many months. We're really playing on the yeah.
He probably does it, dude. I don't want to that's not a shot at Montez Sweat.
Go find out if Montez Sweat has a family. All right.
Okay.
And then,
all right. You
then
continue
come back
your
to me.
analysis.
Okay. But this is the second year in a row the Bears have sent what is presumed to be an early second round pick at the trade deadline. Now, I mean, everybody makes fun of the Chase Claypool thing. I don't know who doesn't make that Chase Claypool trade. Let's be honest here. I mean, the guy had 10 touchdowns as a rookie, and it just felt like he wasn't gelling in Pittsburgh. Every team in the NFL that needs put every other GM in the NFL in that situation, and Chase Claypool is the only wide receiver available at the deadline that can come in and help Justin Fields develop. They make that trade. They just do. It obviously didn't work out for them because they lost out, and then they move on from Chase Claypool. But guess what? That happens. You know what I mean? It's just like picking a bad player in the draft. That's just like doing anything else. What if they pick some bust and he's cut off the team in 2 years anyway? I mean,
everybody wants to give the 49ers all these props all the time for their roster management, and we got to remember that they made one of the worst trades probably ever.
And who their first pick was, or it might have been their second pick, but it was in the round that their first pick was in. It was Jake Moody, the kicker that lost a game for them against the Browns. I believe he missed a field goal against the Vikings. The 49ers, at least over the past few years, have not drafted necessarily well. However, they were on a heater for a few years there where they were not good.
Javon Kinlaw, another
Javon Kinlaw is another one. They haven't had first-round picks to really point at and be like, well, that sucked. But they've, but they keep trading these picks for players, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think this is much needed for the Bears. If you've watched a Bears game this year, you've probably watched the opposing quarterback sit in the pocket for 7 to 8 seconds on every dropback because they don't have any pass rushers. They don't. This was a problem that we talked about in the offseason. We highlighted this. We said, look, all this cap space that they had and the number one pick, it's all great. But they have nothing on defense, specifically on the front lines. They had absolutely nothing, stripped it completely down, which is why we criticized them so heavily for not taking Jalen Carter and instead trading out, adding a 4th-round pick. Mind-blowing. Now you're forced to make this move where you have to once again force yourself to trade what could be a top 35 pick, top 40 pick at the deadline to go get a guy. Look, Montez Sweat's a fantastic player. I still think that this could be a good move for the Bears. I think Montez Sweat can be a number 1 edge in this league. I think he's probably going to get $25 million ish from the Bears here. You know, if you felt confident enough that maybe you could have got him in the offseason, I don't know how much, because if you're trading, like, let's say you don't get him this offseason, now you just gave up a second for 8 games, then you feel really bad.
Like you said,
like, would you have been better off just
they
like
have to give him the contract?
I get it, but would you, like, you know who else is going to be a free agent? Chase Young. Would you have been better off walking into the offseason just being like, okay, we can probably get one of these 2 guys if we just hand them a blank check?
If we traded, we traded Chase Young today, so if they wanted Chase Young,
now that's
they would have gone and got him.
And you know what? Let's just transition into that. Chase Young is going to the 49ers. In case you haven't seen, he gets sent there for a 3rd-round pick, which is less than Montez Sweat. And you know, by my eyes, and I believe by a lot of NFL people's eyes, Chase Young is probably a slightly better asset than Montez Sweat. You know, the injuries and the Chase Young missing time. Yes, and the Chase Young missing time has definitely narrowed that gap. But, like, and especially now that the situations they're in, Chase Young is going to prove why he's going to make that much money because now he's going to be rushing as a number 2. Montez Sweat, honestly, this probably hurts him money-wise because he's going to Chicago. He's not going to have any help. So he's going to not really produce down the second half. Now, it was smart of the Commanders to make this trade after they had already sent Montez Sweat. Because if they held on to Chase, because the Commanders or the Bears probably made that trade with Washington thinking, okay, well, we were looking at Sweat and Young potentially being free agents this offseason. We can go get one of them. Once they're like, okay, well, we just got Montez Sweat. Chase Young's going to re-sign in Washington, and we wouldn't have been able to get him anyway. Now that this has happened, they're probably kicking themselves a little bit because like, Chase Young is now definitely going to be a free agent after this offseason.
Yeah.
And we could have went and got that guy. We didn't really put a bow on the Bears trade, but Bears, you get a good player. Commander gets a high-value pick. This one, 49ers get a good player, man. I'm sorry, Washington, I feel like you could have gotten better value than this. I mean, I don't know what teams were calling. I don't know what kind of offers were being made, but if a second was the market for Montez Sweat, I feel like a second had to be the market for Chase Young. And
it felt like we were dead set on trading both of them before the deadline. Like, that had to happen either way. Like, I feel like Josh Harris came down and was like, look, we need a complete rebuild, which is totally understandable. I'm on board. But he was probably like, we need to trade both of these guys by the deadline or somebody's ass is getting fired. Like, that's what I think happened. And as we were coming closer to the deadline, you don't know what teams are calling about Chase Young. The Bears already got their guy. So I think that we just sold him to the highest bidder. And Sanford ended up coming out on top. That's fair. Like, it's disappointing, especially after seeing what Montez Sweat got in return from Chicago, but it is what it is. I think that I wanted to keep one of them. Like, I thought that that's what I wanted the plan to be, and then we pay one of them, but I sent it in the Blitz group chat before. Like, we're going to end up in this constant cycle that we've been in during the Ron Rivera era, where we barely squeak into the playoffs as a wild card, or we don't and we finish around 500, and then really the season's a wash. And then we pick in the middle of the first round, and we draft another Jamin Davis. We draft another Johan Dotson, who verdict's still out. Emmanuel Forbes, I think the verdict is almost done after his first 8 games this season, which is so sad. But we'll strike out just like we struck out on the past 3 first-round picks, and rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins. But we also struck out there So not a great history of drafting in the first round. I think we need a top 3 pick, top 2 pick. We need this kind of capital. And now we've got some pieces to move on draft day. We got that second. We've got that third. We've got picks to move so that we can, if we don't have a bad enough pick in the first, we can move up. And I'm full tank at this point. But I could see that you're groaning. What is your beef?
I'm looking at your guys' draft history. That's what
Oh
it is.
God, man.
Okay. The 2021
Brian
draft.
Kerrigan and Brandon Sheriff are the two guys that we've drafted in the first round that turned out. RG3.
Chase Young. I mean, granted, you just traded him for a third-round pick, but he's going to get I'm telling you.
The number 2 overall pick.
He's going to get paid like he's going to get $30 million per year this offseason. It's going to happen because he's going to produce like a maniac on that line. And he was already producing pretty well in Washington. So like
if he can stay healthy,
okay.
Which he doesn't seem like he can.
All right. Ever. 2021 draft, widely considered to be, I mean, it's only been 2 or 3 years, but if you sit down and look at that draft and start listing off names, you'll quickly come to the conclusion that this is one of the best drafts, probably the best draft of this century, and is probably going to go down as one of the greatest NFL draft classes of all time, if not the best. You walked away with Jamin Davis, Sam Cosmi, Benjamin St. Juste, Diami Brown, John Bates, Derek Forrest is good, Cameron Cheeseman, long snapper, William Bradley King, Shaka Toney, and Dax Milne. So that's fun. 2020, Chase Young. I guess you didn't have a second-round pick that year. Not sure why. You got Gibby, who's on the roster still. Sadiq Charles, Antonio Gandy, Goldman, Keith Ismail, Khalil Hudson, Cam Curl, good pick. James Smith-Williams, 2019, Haskins, Montez Sweat,
Sadiq Charles was a decent pick. He's the plug-it-in.
2019 was a good draft. While Haskins was a miss, you get Sweat, McLaurin, and Cole Holcomb, Steelers legend. 2018, Daron Payne, Darius Geis, Christian, Troy Apke, Tim Settle. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that there have been a lot of people that have left. It's just there's no guarantee, and I'm almost certain that I understand the tank thing. But even without Chase Young and even without Montez Sweat, like, we just saw them come with, and I know that they scored a backdoor touchdown, but they were just 7 points away from the Eagles. They were just 7 points away from the Eagles 2 weeks ago, too. And I guess I think it might just be an Eagles thing. Maybe.
If you were watching, I know you mentioned that, we had a backdoor touchdown, which is true, but if you watch the entire game, we weren't in it at any point, and even when it was, wire to wire. I know, and it just didn't feel like...
Well, it doesn't feel like it because you're playing arguably the best team in football, but... Yeah. Is this team, even now, without those two guys, do you expect to be picking in the top 5? Because I don't expect them to be picking in the top 5. And really, the only thing that turns the franchise around like that is quarterback. And look, Sam Howell's been doing some really nice things, but he might still be one of those guys where you're just like, well, it's Sam Howell this year, and that's fine, but it's not bad, and it's not great. And we're swimming in the middle here.
Look, all right, listen to this remaining schedule for Washington, which is, this gets me so excited, actually, okay?
This is important.
At New England, all right? Probably an L. At Seattle. The Giants, we have a chance. At Dallas. Miami. At the Rams. At the Jets. San Fran, Dallas. I think that we could lose every single game from here on out and be in a good draft position. And I see that smile on your face indicating that you can confirm that.
Yeah, no, that I haven't seen their schedule, so that's my bad.
You better.
Okay, I just want to do one more thing here. So the post RG3 years, you traded away 2 first-round picks the next 2 years. So your 2 second-round picks were David Amerson and Trent Murphy. Those were the first 2 picks in 2013 and 2014.
Well, you're not providing analysis for the situation that we're talking
it's
about.
So funny, you guys are so silly.
We can have a Steelers draft history episode.
Oh, dude, do you want to do a 2013 or 2014 to 2018 draft history where in 2020 we hadn't retained a single one of those players except for TJ Watt? That was fun.
Oof.
Yeah. But man, we might have to cut some of this out. Let's do the 49ers side of this because we kind of went Bears side and then we did double Commanders. 49ers side, Jesus Christ, they are going to be, I mean, on a name value basis, this is probably the best front seven in a long time. Like, especially if Chase Young can be that guy that, like, he is presumed to be. He's back on the other side of Nick Bosa for the first time since college. So that's awesome.
Oh,
did they play together?
Shit.
Because Bosa sat out. But remember, Bosa sat out his last year because everybody was like, "Oh, well, he's going to be a top 2 pick anyway."
That's a good question. I forgot that they were teammates.
Yeah, we'll just say that they were, and if we're wrong, somebody will correct us. But those two are together. Javon Hargrave is in the middle. Eric Armstead's in the middle. Fred Warner is at linebacker. Drake Greenlaw is at linebacker.
This defense has been struggling as of
it has.
We will say that
the team as a whole has been struggling, and I think that was the reason why they make this move today. They've been struggling more so at the quarterback position, but that's a conversation for another day, and not something that they could fix at the trade deadline unless they trade for Josh Dobbs. Am I right, Vikings fans? But on the long term side of this, Chase Young is going to be free agent this year. There's almost no way that they are able to bring him back. Even if you can do the New Orleans Saints salary cap flexibility stuff, almost impossible with the amount of high value contracts that they have on this team, which is why the price was probably just a compensatory 3rd round pick. And that's kind of the overarching thing here, is that while it sucks that, like, Chase Young is probably worth more than that, if nobody else was offering and for whatever reason the Commanders felt hell-bent on getting rid of both of them, and this is your best offer, you have to take it. Now, I want to come back to the Commanders for 1 second. Why trade both? Yeah. I get that you want to tank, but why trade both? He's 20. He's what, 24? 25?
I think I understand it. These guys are young, and that was kind of the centerpiece of our team. Like, if you could look at one good thing on our team, it was like, oh, that front line has been great. It's kind of been playing like poo-poo. Like, Jack Del Rio, you can blame it on him all you want, but this group all together it's not working. So we have good players, yes. It's not working how it's currently set up. I agree with all the moves that we made today. Like, blow it all up. Like, I want to be, like you said, with Minnesota, gives that. Unfortunately, Kirk Cousins got injured. That stinks. It gave them a direction. We needed a direction.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the odds of them being able to get Caleb Williams, even if they have that top-ish pick somewhere like in the top 8 or something, packaging a pick, like even going from 8 to 1, like we saw the package for Bryce Young going from 9 to 1 was a 1st-round pick, DJ Moore, or the 9th pick, another 1st-round pick, a 2nd-round pick, and DJ Moore. Like, to go get Caleb Williams for you guys.
That's a good point.
Terry McLaurin, a future 1st-round pick, a 2nd-round pick to go get Caleb.
I think
you do that?
I think trading Terry
even then,
at this point,
that's probably not even going to be enough, because that was for Bryce Young. This is Caleb Williams. We were talking, like, I don't know if anybody's seen the Colin Cowherd video that went around a couple weeks ago where it was like the Steelers. Cowherd said the Steelers should trade T.J. Watt, George Pickens. I don't know if it was T.J. Watt, George Pickens, and 3 first-round picks, or T.J. Watt, George Pickens, and a 1st-round pick, or 2, whatever the nomination. But it was some level of draft compensation as well. And everybody was giving him shit for it, dude. Honestly, T.J. Watt's great. I love T.J. Watt. But if Caleb Williams is what he's supposed to be, which is he should at some point in his career be a top 3 or 5 quarterback in the NFL, it's worth giving up T.J. Watt for. It's worth giving up George Pickens for. It's worth giving up draft compensation, because with T.J. Watt, with this team currently constructed, we don't stand a chance. The same way right now with, Sam Howell's been great. You guys don't stand a chance at winning a Super Bowl. And that's why we're having this conversation of like, okay, maybe we just do need to reset, even with a relatively solid roster. It's like, all right, we got to back out of this and maybe try and get higher.
Well,
in the draft.
thank you. I appreciate you hopping onto the bandwagon. Yeah, that thought process. Okay,
but it's just kind of crazy that's where we're at as an NFL. That like you need to pick in the top 5, or you need to get super lucky picking a franchise quarterback outside of that top area of the draft to really have a chance at a Super Bowl or, conference championship, division title, whatever. Like,
Hey, we've been talking about, I know that this is even getting deeper into it or like more off the beaten path, but like what if we sold whatever team is picking one? What if we get, I mean, we've been talking about how Sam Howell looks like a guy. Maybe not the guy, but he looks like a
okay,
guy.
listen.
What if we traded our first round pick, Howell, a second, and Dotson?
Are you kidding? That's worse than the McLaurin package. It's
Yes.
almost infinitely worse. Because
Yes.
if a team's picking at number 1 and Sam Howell's an upgrade for them at quarterback, they're going to take Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Like, the only team that would probably be willing to move out of 1 is the Cardinals. And that's because they have Kyler Murray. And the Cardinals would have 0 use for Sam Howell.
Like I talked about earlier, nobody expected the Bears to move out of that pick.
Yes, but they didn't move out to go get Sam Darnold from the Panthers to come in and replace Justin Fields.
Yeah, okay. That's fair point. Fair point. I just don't know what we do with Sam Howell if we end up with Caleb, if we end up going this route of full tank and we get
trade
one
him for a second-round pick or something. But
what if we trade for 2? Like Marvin Harrison is the next
trade for
best
2
prospect.
first-round picks?
No, trade for number 2 overall, which
Oh.
might be Marvin Harrison. But honestly, Marvin Harrison probably isn't going 2, right? Like overall,
I don't know.
depending on positional need, I think once we get close to the draft,
I think, like you said, I think once we get closer to the draft, I think Olu Fashanu, the tackle from Penn State, could also be in that conversation. He looks like he's going to be one of the best tackle prospects we've had come through in a little bit. Drake May, the quarterback from North Carolina, is there as well. So there's going to be options. This is a good class. Like, this is a pretty good class. I feel like you guys wouldn't, like, if you're at 8, like, I don't see you moving up unless, like, let's say we get to 3 and Drake May's there, and that's the Cardinals pick. Now but I mean, would you rather just stick with Sam Howell at that point? Then, I mean, the way that he's playing,
draft Drake May, yeah,
then especially like give up an extra first than to go get Drake May.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather stick with Howell. But Commanders, this has kind of turned into a Commanders last half of the episode here. Fine. So we're talking about them. May not be good, but
we just sold them our star players.
They're in the news.
Yeah, we are in the news. We did not trade some of the guys that were expected to be dealt. Cameron Curl, Antonio Gibson. These were other guys that were rumored to be dealt today. Didn't end up going. But overall, Josh Harris and the Washington Commanders have made a statement by trading away Montez Sweat for a second rounder from Chicago and Chase Young for the third rounder from San Fran, like we just talked about. But yeah, man, I think that just about does it for our trade deadline recap episode. Like we led off the episode with, unfortunately, it wasn't as exciting as we expected it to be. I mean, some of the names that didn't get dealt, I'll list them off real quick. Davante Adams had a really frustrating night on Monday Night Football last night. Was throwing around his helmet, saying F this BS live on national television. So he didn't get dealt. None of the Raiders got dealt. Josh Jacobs could have been traded. Derrick Henry doesn't end up going anywhere, but that kind of seemed like that was going to be a thing. Jerry Jeudy apparently had a good offer in place.
None of the Broncos got dealt.
Yep, none of the Broncos got dealt. There was some T. Higgins stuff that came out. Uche didn't get dealt. So there was a lot of guys around the league that were expected to be tipped off that didn't end up going. And also, last trickling in stuff that we had, I mean, guess not trickling in, but smaller deals, Rasul Douglas to Buffalo, DPJ to Detroit, and Ezra Cleveland to Jacksonville. So an active trade deadline, to say the least, but probably not the most exciting. But we'll look forward to next year, and we'll see how my Washington Commanders play on different teams. So we will catch you guys later. Peace!